Hello, in this video we are going to work through stage 4 of this web development activity. And what we're doing is we're taking JSON data and we're using it to generate a display to help show some user some information. And what we're going to look at in this stage is specifically manipulating the data so that we can render it properly. So the big ideas here really are string manipulation and basic math functions. And I've broken this up into 2 videos because there's quite a bit in this section. And so I'm going to create a new file, but what I'm actually going to call my file is stage 4a. And so all I did to get ready was I copied everything from our last stage in here, deleted everything in the get JSON function, and changed my title. So I'm going to skip this step 2. This is console practice. I have a video where I've gone through this. But we're not going to do this here. This will go through some basics of string manipulation and using some built-in functions that are really useful, not just in JavaScript, but in most programming languages. And we're going to come down here. So we're going to access and display the values. And so the first thing we're going to do, like I said, is delete everything from our getJSON function. And we're going to apply essentially a 5-step algorithm. What we're going to do is we're first going to copy the values into a temporary variable called country1 data. And that's going to be stored as a string. And it turns out that all of the values have a numerical value with a square bracket. And so everything to the left of the square bracket I can actually pull out, turn into an integer, and use. So the second stage is we're going to find the location of that square bracket. The third stage is we're going to access using substring, everything from the start of the string to everything just before that square bracket. And it turns out there's some spaces in there, so we're going to remove those using the replace function. And then finally we're going to convert those into integers. Now this might seem a little odd, so let me go through this step by step, and we'll kind of set this up so that you can see each step along the way. I'm just going to refresh this. So let's just start and make sure you understand what I mean when I talk about the value. So I'm going to console.log quickly the data, and I'm going to save this, and here's our data. So what I'm interested in is, so for index 1, every index has a value associated with it, and this is the value that tells me the number of people infected with HIV. Now you'll notice that in some cases that is no data, and in other cases it's an inequality. We are only going to work with the ones that actually have a valid numerical value. So if I want to access the value for Albania, I'm going to delete this and say country1 data is equal to data.fact at 1.value. And then let's console.log country1 data. So there is the value for Albania. Now, the temptation here might just to be to perform a substring from index 0 to index 4, so that's inclusive, exclusive. But be careful, because I'm just going to go to the next country by increasing that index, and you'll see that that isn't going to work. So that's why we apply this algorithm, that we find the location of this square bracket and take everything to the left of it. So let's come back there. Oh, let's save. And let's refresh. So I'm going to make a variable called lock1, and that's going to be country1 data.index of, and we're going to find the index of that open square bracket. And then I'm going to console.log location 1. We'll just refresh this, and sure enough, it's index 5. And again, indexes start at 0, and so I say 0, 1, 2, 3. The space counts as 4, and then the open bracket is the 5th index. So now what I can do is I can say val1 is equal to country1 data substring, and I'm going to get the substring from 0 to location 1. And let's console.log, and we're going to console.log val1. And there we go. Now notice I have 1400, but I also have that space at the end there. And in some cases, I'm going to have a couple spaces because the way this data is stored is it actually puts spaces to separate division of units in some cases. So what I need to do now is I'm going to use that technique where I can replace all spaces with an empty string to collapse the string and get rid of them. So val1 is equal to val1 dot replace. And there's a little bit of a funny notation. If I just do this, that will work. But the way the replace function works is it will only replace the first instance of a space, which actually for this purpose works out fine. But it's really common to want to replace all instances. And the way JavaScript does this is I put a backslash space backslash g. So whatever is in between those backslashes will get replaced. And so that's going to replace all of the spaces with an empty string. And I say that's console.log val1. Oh, or did I make a mistake? Let's just take a second and take a look. 26. 26. Let me just pause and find my mistake. My mistake here is this should be a / space /. Now that should work okay. There we go. So you see here, if I highlight this one, I have a space at the end. Now no space. And the last step is I'm going to take this and I'm going to use the standard function or a function parsin from the standard library, and we're going to parse into val1. Console.log val1. So now what we do is we display this, and so that's how the value starts. We find the index of the square bracket and take everything to the left of it, which gives us that space. We replace all the spaces with an empty string, which now gives us the same value with no spaces, but that's a string, and then we convert it to an integer, which we can now process. So we want to do this for 2 more elements in our data set. I'm going to pause it here and do that. You can pick any elements you want, but again, don't pick elements that are no data or ones that have an inequality in them. We're going to ignore those for now. So I'm just going to pause this. Okay, there we go. So I've kind of duplicated those 2 more times, and notice I've just changed my values here in terms of my variables. And when I refresh this, there's my first value, and then I end up with 1400 as an integer. There's my second value, I end up with 14,000 as an integer. There's my third value, and I end up with 120,000 as an integer. You'll notice I have a little something funny here, so let's come back over here and take a look. Oh, I console.log val1, console.log val3. There we go. Now, you might have got a NaN, which means not a number, so just make sure you're picking sample data or sample values that actually have data. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to actually do something with this. So if we come back to it, we're going to display the information, and we're going to use some JS to do that, some JavaScript to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to copy this code here, and I'm going to put it into my HTML section, which is in my body. And there we go. So now when I refresh the page, I get HIV infection rates compared proportionally by country. And I have 3 divs, each with their own ID. And inside each div, I have a P, each with their own unique ID. But I don't see them here because there's nothing in them. And this is this is a little bit of a funny part. I want to use the information I access from the JSON file to set the size or the width of these. And once I've set the width of them, they'll display, and I can set the color as well. But I need to put some styling for this. And I have some predefined styling right here. And there's something with this styling that isn't great. So I'm just going to paste it in here and take a look and see if you can identify what's the bad design piece here. So I'm going to say style /style. Tap that in. So here is my CSS. And of course nothing appears because we see that the width of all of these is 0. Now the bad design piece here is that what we've done in every case here is we've set different colors, but these parts are the same. So what I would probably, or a better approach here when you're setting this up, is take the common elements and then have a div tag. And now all three of these divs will inherit these properties unless I override them by giving them some new property. But now you write it once. So that means one spot will affect them all, which is a nice way of designing our CSS code. So what I need to do now inside my JavaScript is I need to take the val and use it to affect the width of each of these divs. So I'm going to use val1 to affect the width of div1, val2 to affect the width of div2, and val3. So to do that, what I use this here, this DOM manipulation. So I can actually get the document and get element by ID, and I can set the style to whatever my value is and set in pixels. So I'm going to say document.get element by ID, and I'm going to get element div1. I'm going to set the style of div1. Specifically, I'm going to set the width. Let's just pull this over, and I'm going to set the width to val1 plus px. The reason I need the px is because it has to be in pixels. So if I take this and I refresh this, there's that. Now notice it goes way off the page, and we'll have to deal with that. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take each of these, and I'm going to do that for val2, val3, div2, div3, and if I refresh this, you can see I have the three countries. But again, it goes way off the page, and the reason why is because these are really big numbers. Now the other thing I might want to do to make it a bit more readable is I might want to put the country name in here. And I can do this using this command right here. And so what happens here is I use DOM manipulation again. And so I do document get element by ID, and I'm going to get P1, and then I get the inner HTML. So what this means is take your P1 and set the inner HTML. Basically, I can put whatever text I want there. And I use these pre-tags. What these pre-tags do, see the pre here open and the close tag, is that there's some formatting issues when we pull this information from the JSON. And so the pre-tag will set some predefined formatting. And I access the country name, but we need to make sure these match. So the first country was index 1, so I'm going to access index 1 and val1. So if I save this now and refresh this, I get Albania with 1400. So that's 1400 pixels long. And now I'm going to take this and I copy this for the other two elements. So this is going to be P2 and P3, and the other two indexes I used were 2 and 6. So I'm going to set that to 2, and I'm going to set that to 6, and that's going to be val2, and that's going to be val3. So if I save this and refresh it, now I see a bar that the size adjusts to represent the actual value, and then it gives me the country name in each case. Now, this is not useful at all because, this is 120,000 pixels, so you don't want this as, as a nicely displayed data. And what we'll do in our next video is we'll figure out how to apply some math to scale these appropriately. I hope this video helped. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.